You are listening to the Bat Flip Podcast, a baseball podcast from Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Damian and Matt.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Bat Flip Podcast. My name is Damian, along with my co-host, Matt. We are coming to you on October 10th, which is a Saturday. We're going to do this a day early because the ALCS is starting on Sunday, which is tomorrow. So we wanted to get this out to you guys. But before we jump into everything, how are you doing, Matt?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm just chilling, watching some football this afternoon. My Auburn Tigers playing Arkansas, and taking a little break from baseball because there's no baseball today and tomorrow. I was thinking we might at least have one of the division series games go 5 games and have a couple baseball games today, but that didn't happen. So we got some focus on football this afternoon for me, but right now I'm ready to talk some baseball. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I'm ready to start some football today and tomorrow. Before tomorrow night, we get that the ALCS starting. They get the Laker game back on tomorrow. Hopefully, they can close that out because I was very disappointed in their performance last night. But yeah, I mean, starting tomorrow night, we got 8 straight days of baseball if necessary.
Yeah, if
Because there's
necessary, for sure.
seven straight for each series if they have to go to 7 games. Hopefully, for my sake, they don't, because I don't want to have to deal with the Game 7.
I don't either.
It's going to be a very fantastic, fun week. I mean, we lots and lots of baseball to come.
Absolutely, it's going to be really fun. I'm excited. We're going to have some cool matchups. A couple teams in there that weren't especially expected to be in there at the start of the season. A couple teams that were favorites, and let's get this rolling.
Yeah, so just before we start, we wanted to, there's a little snippet about this episode. So this episode is actually number 10 for us, which is pretty funny because on the date we are recording it, it is 10/10 of 2020. So it's just really weird how that date aligns with all of our shows. It's just very
Yes,
weird.
that is weird. You just mentioned that a few minutes ago, and I was like, "Whoa, that's pretty crazy." So, it's interesting stuff there,
Baseball gods are giving us a sign.
right?
Well, let's just go ahead and start. We're going to start with the National League today. Let's jump over with the Braves and Marlins to start with. This is your team versus the Marlins, which I picked the Marlins, and trust me, I know you let me hear about that. But game one was probably the most exciting game of this series. The Marlins went up, 4-1?
4-1
And
early.
then Sandy Alcantara decided to hit Ronald Acuna with a 90-something mile-an-hour fastball inside. And that seemed to wake up the Braves, right?
Yeah, Ronald Acuna was at the plate, and teams have pitched him inside a lot this year, and in the past too. I think that's probably the biggest hole when you're pitching to Ronald Acuna is to throw inside. And Sandy Alcantara is a hard thrower, but he let a pitch get away from him. I don't think it was intentional, but it woke up the Braves because this is the 5th time in Acuna's short career since 2018 when he came up that he's been hit by the Marlins. So Acuna's getting a little bit frustrated about it, especially since the first one of those was intentional by Jose Urena back in 2018. So basically, the team just got fired up after that. Acuna went to first base. He was fine after the hit by pitch. He didn't have any kind of injury or anything, and he stole second immediately. And the Braves woke up and scored a couple runs in that inning, and they never looked back in the series. They ended up winning that game 9-5. They scored 6 runs in the 7th inning. Travis d'Arnaud hit a really big homer in that game, which we'll be talking about him in just a few minutes, but this was a really good game for the Braves. Great comeback. It kind of looked frustrating early on with the Marlins going up 4-1. You were thinking, this is gonna be a series for if you're a Brave on the Braves side of things. And after that hit by pitch, I mean, it just changed everything.
Yeah, I mean, and that was the only game that the Marlins scored a run. And just shout out to the Braves pitching, like we've been talking about. They in their first 5 games in this postseason, they have had 4 shutouts, and that's the first time that's happened since the 1905 Giants. So big shout out to Ian Anderson and Kyle Wright. They had 2 fantastic games to back up in game 2 and 3 to really continue that Braves momentum that's been happening since game 1.
Oh, absolutely. Kyle Wright looked really good in game three. That's one of my keys to this Braves team is whether or not Kyle Wright can step into that number three spot because we've seen through the regular season and the early in the postseason that Max Fried and Ian Anderson are really pretty solid as being good starting pitchers, but Kyle Wright's been real inconsistent this year. And when we preview the Braves Dodgers NLCS, we'll talk a little bit about Kyle Wright a little bit more. But um, this is a guy who, in this game, in game three, had 6 innings pitched, 3 hits, no runs, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts, and that's by far his best line of the season. In September, he started to look a little bit better, but he wasn't able to do a game where he, pitched 6 shutout innings, and the strikeout to walk ratio there was his best of the year. So I was real impressed with Kyle Wright in that game.
Yeah, and Ian Anderson, I mean, he even gave you guys 5 2/3 innings, 0 runs, 8 strikeouts, 1 walk, 3 hits. Just another fantastic outing from Ian Anderson. I mean, he's really proving that he can be a stud in this lineup or in this rotation. So this rotation is going to be scary, especially when they can get Mike Soroka back if he can be, healthy next season. That'll be
Absolutely.
big. But we don't want to just totally throw the Marlins aside. They did have a guy, Pablo Lopez, in this series who looked very good as well. 5 innings, he gave up 3 hits, 7 strikeouts, no walks. Did give up 2 runs, but just very solid. I mean, we said this Marlins team was inexperienced and their pitching staff was young, and then they were going to have to work their way into postseason baseball, which we all know it just the intensity and everything. And he looked very good in that his start. So big shout out to Pablo Lopez, and we'll definitely be hearing from the Marlins soon.
Oh yeah, for sure. And Pablo Lopez looked, like I say, he looked good. He gave up the 2 home runs, but I expected the Marlins to have a game or two where they really had a young starting pitcher throw really, really well in this series. And Pablo Lopez was the guy who really did it. I mean, 7 strikeouts to no walks. That's tough to do. The Braves are a pretty patient lineup, and they do walk a lot. So, um, he did give up the 2 home runs, and but the real problem there was that the Marlins offense didn't back him up. And I know in game three, one of the guys that did super well in the first series, the wild card series against the Cubs, was Sixto Sanchez, and he really struggled. So I thought that was a big factor as well, that they needed Sixto to pitch really well in the series.
Yeah, he just lost command. I mean, he just didn't look like he had anything. I mean, that's been a thing with Sixto is that he doesn't have great command. But 3 innings, 4 hits, 3 walks, and 2 strikeouts. You just expect a little bit better from Sixto. But I mean, young, inexperienced a team that's in the playoffs. That's what we're talking about. Nerves just got to him, and he's a better pitcher than that. And if he gets back to the playoffs next year, I'm sure he will do a lot better than that line.
Oh, for sure, he's going to be a really good pitcher. He's just inexperienced and he's learning. So
Yeah. Well, that pretty much wraps up that Braves Marlins series. In our predictions, you had Atlanta in four and Miami in four, and I had Miami in four.
yep.
So go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say that we also had we were gonna do for each series, we're gonna do a
Oh,
player of the
right.
series, and in this one, there's nobody it could have been other than Travis d'Arnaud. This guy hit 600 in this series with a 692 on base percentage, a 1400 slugging percentage, and a 2.092 OPS, which is just absolutely off the charts. He hit 2 big homers. He hit the go-ahead homer in Game One. He hit a home run in Game Two, which was just a 2-0 game. So he was accounted for half the Braves runs at Game Two. Had a couple doubles. He broke Game Three open with one of those doubles, and he had 3 walks to 1 strikeout, which is big for him because he's a guy who has struck out a lot this year and had 7 RBIs in the series. He was incredible, and that coming from the catcher spot is very, very impressive. So shout out to Travis d'Arnaud for having the best player in this series for sure.
Yeah, and shout out to Alex Anthopoulos for that signing in the offseason. I think what was it, a 2-year, $16 million? It was like 8 million a year, I believe.
I believe
Yeah,
so.
he had a great second half with the Rays the year before, and then when he signed to the Braves, people were like, "Man, why did we sign him?" Like, but he's turned out to be a really good catcher this year that who's actually turned around to hit a lot. When he was with the Mets, he was known for being more of a defensive first catcher that really couldn't. I mean, he'd have little streaks, but he could never put a season of hitting together. And ever since he went to the Dodgers and then to the Rays and then now to the Braves, he's found out his swing, and it's pretty cool to see for him.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, since I forgot about the player of the week of the series, let's now move on to the Dodgers versus Padres series. You had the Dodgers in 4 in this series. I had the Dodgers in 3, and the Dodgers did pull off the sweep. Didn't wasn't too controversial really. There was a big game too, which we'll talk about, but we got first we have to bring up with the Padres is that they did not have Denilson Lamet on this roster as well. They did think that they were going to have Mike Clevenger and actually had him start game 1, but he only made it an inning. He had 1 inning, 3 walks with a strikeout. And when he came out for that second inning, his velocity was, I mean, he threw one pitch and it was at like 90 on a fastball, and they immediately just pulled him from there.
Yeah, Clevenger really needed to be a big factor in this series, with especially with Lamet out, because the Padres ended up, and we'll talk about in a minute. They had that bullpen game in Game 3 that was a disaster, gave up 12 runs, and I mean, if you have Lamet and Clevenger healthy, then that probably doesn't happen in Game 3. And we'll talk about Game 2 here in a second, and that game was up for grabs. So if you had Clevenger pitch well in Game 1, and then Game 3 you had maybe a Lamet, or maybe Lamet starts Game 2, and you have Davies start Game 3 or something, then you could have had a pretty good rotation there, and this series would have been a lot more competitive. But those injuries just killed the Padres. I mean, you can't go up against this Dodgers team with their pitching and expect to be able to outscore them if unless you've got like elite pitching of yourself, and the Padres just didn't have that in this series. So
Yeah, and it was really a big struggle for the Padres' big two guys. Tatis and Machado, they did not do great at all this series. Machado had a big homer off of Kershaw in game 2, but outside of that, Tatis and Manny really didn't do anything.
yeah, their stat line, they went a combined 4 for 23 with that one home run you mentioned, and then 3 walks out of 2 guys who walk a lot, and then 6 strikeouts really wasn't that bad. But I mean, it was just a lot of weak contact and get a lot of outs for these 2 guys, which is totally unexpected there. Game 2, we had probably the wildest game of the division series. I don't know if it was the best game of all of overall in the division series because of the Game 5 we had between the Rays and Yankees. We'll get to a little bit later, but this was the most exciting game of the postseason so far, probably. The Dodgers won at 6-5, but you had a Dodgers jump up to a quick lead, and then you know Kershaw, and you mentioned Kershaw looked really really good for 5 and 2/3 innings, and then playoff Kershaw happened, and the Padres hit back-to-back homers off of him between that one Machado homer, and Hosmer hit one off of him as well, and that was a problem for Kershaw.
Yeah, Kershaw, I mean, like you said, he looked good for 5 and 2/3. And actually, the pitch that Machado hit was a slider down and out of the zone, really. I mean, it was almost at his shins. And Manny Machado is just very good at being able to go down and get that ball. The Hosmer pitch was just a slider that didn't break away, and it just stayed right over the heart of the plate. But, Kershaw, 6 innings, giving up those 3 runs. But before that, he'd only given up one, 6 strikeouts. But what really started the series is on that Manny home run. We've talked about Slam Diego. They are just very energetic, and they bring the energy and they never stop. And when Machado hit that home run, he turned around and he threw his bat to the dugout and started getting them hyped up because they had been really quiet up until that point in this series. And then Hosmer to hit another home run right after that, it really got the Padres going. And then they brought in, it was right after they pulled Kershaw, they brought in Brusdar Graterol to face Fernando Tatis, and this has to be probably the play of the playoffs so far. Brusdar throws a 99-mile-an-hour fastball right down the middle, and Tatis turns on it, takes it to dead center field. Cody Bellinger runs, I believe they said on StatCast it was 97 feet that he ran to the wall, and at the wall he jumps up, robs the home run, but it wasn't just like a straight. He actually jumped 4 feet to his left to rob the home run at the time from where he jumped to where he landed, and took that. It was a game. It would have put the Padres ahead, honestly. And then Dodgers started bringing their emotion. Brusdar threw his hat and his glove and everything, and then Machado and the Dodgers, they all started going back and forth, and it really just it brought the energy back to this series.
Yeah, that was a crazy play. I don't know if there's any way that somebody is able to make a better play in this postseason, especially at a time like that where your your team is about to go down by a run in a postseason game, and in a swing game in the series, because if the Padres win game two and split the first two, you never know what might happen after that. But that was the backbreaker for the Padres game two. After that, they still had a chance to come back. Kenley Jansen looked horrible in game two, and
Yes.
you might be able to elaborate a little bit on his inconsistency in the postseason so far, but Kenley Jansen looked horrible. He gave up 2 runs. Just his cutter wasn't didn't have great velocity. He was getting hit around. Then they brought in Joe Kelly, who's our favorite Astro hater out there, to leave the bases loaded after he walked 2 guys. So I mean, they were able to survive this game, but that was not a very good outing from Kenley Jansen, and that's something that's going to be worrisome for the Dodgers moving forward. And you can elaborate a little bit on what you think they should do there, because I'm not really sure what their other options are.
Well, I mean, Kenley hit 94 in that game, so it wasn't a velocity problem. It's just that his mechanics are off right now. We've said he is a big guy, and if his mechanics get off a little bit, it really throws him off sync. He's really struggled with that the last couple years. I really feel like ever since he had that big heart scare going to Colorado,
Yeah,
it's really kind of changed Kenley. Um, but I mean, they have options. I mean, Kenley didn't look great, but I still trust him if that makes any sense. I mean, he has these games where he looks really bad, but then he'll look really good again. Um, but Dave Roberts has already said that he he trusts Kenley still in those positions, but he's not always it's not always going to be Kenley in those positions. Um, I expect Blake Trinan to get some if the game dictates it. They've been really seeming to bring Trinan in like the fifth or sixth and let him go an inning or two and kind of just set everything down.
rich guy.
I could see Bruzdar. They like to bring him in these high leverage situations. They brought him in against Tatis at that point, but he's a guy who I could see be a closer as well. If they needed to, Joe Kelly. I mean, I know they brought him in that situation. I don't really expect them to bring Joe Kelly in save situations just because he does struggle with command a lot. Um, but I mean, they do have options
Yeah.
for that time.
Of course, you bring in Joe Kelly there because you've already used Graterol and Trinan, so you
Yeah,
had to bring somebody in because Jansen was definitely going to blow that game. He just didn't have it, and Joe Kelly was the guy that they were able to bring in. So, um,
yeah.
and real quick, let's talk about in Game Three. I know you wanted to talk about Will Smith.
Yeah, he went 5 for 6, but he is the first catcher ever to have a 5-hit game in the playoffs, and he's also the ninth player ever in postseason history to have a 5-hit game. So something that's just really surprising. Not only being a catcher and having a 5-hit game, but the ninth player ever in postseason history. I mean, think about how long baseball has been played, and especially postseason baseball, and for that to be only the ninth player ever to do something like that, I mean that's big. That is something that we might not ever see in our lifetime again.
Yeah, that's very impressive, and especially for a guy who he's a good player who wasn't a he was a good prospect. I think he was top 100, but he wasn't one of those elite prospects to come up. And he's been a really good catcher. He's kind of under the radar a little bit because of the depth of the Dodgers, but he's a really good player and a young guy. He's going 5 for 6 in the playoffs, couple doubles in that game. Very impressive. Another guy who was very impressive in the series, in my opinion, was Cody Bellinger. Obviously, we talked about that catch he made, but he had a good day. He had a good series at the plate, which is really big for the Dodgers because this is a guy that has been okay this year, but he hasn't lived up to his MVP standards that he set last year. So in this series, he hit 333 with a 429 on base percentage, a 750 slugging percentage, a 1179 OPS. He had 5 RBIs, had a home run. He looked good in the series at the plate, which is a very, very nice development for the Dodgers because he's a guy that they needed to get going.
Yeah, they need MVP Bellinger back from last year, and he's always struggled in the postseason. Really, just something about that moment, and I mean, he really struggles sometimes to catch up to that high fastball. So this is a big series for Cody, not only defensively but being able to put it together at the plate. Um, if the Dodgers want to go on and be very successful in this postseason, they're going to need Bellinger to keep playing like this.
Yep, they sure
So,
do. So next
well,
we'll go.
yeah.
We'll move on next to the Astros and the A's series. What did you think of this one, Damien?
My notes for this series is offense, 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 and more offense.
Oh, absolutely.
That's pretty much this. I mean, they were outrageous. We came in talking last week about how the A's pitching staff they have a chance to be very very good, and they did not put that together.
So
Um,
they did not. The Astros team slash line. This isn't just one player. This is the team slash line. They hit in the series 322, they 388 on base percentage, a 594 slugging percentage, and a 982 OPS. That 982 OPS would have been like top 10 in baseball for an individual this season. And this team put this together in a 4-game series, which is crazy. And the A's weren't that far behind. The A's had a 269 batting average, a 327 on base, 575 slugging, and a 901 OPS, which is extremely elite. Typically, a team that puts up that slash line in a postseason series wins in a sweep. So this series had a lot of runs scored, and it was wild. Um, One thing that we wanted to talk about on the pitching side, though, actually two things. But the first thing is Framber Valdez looked pretty good. This is a guy that we talked about last week in the wild card series, and he in this series looked really good.
yeah, he had 7 innings, 5 hits, 2 runs, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts. Um, we had talked about him coming out of the bullpen against Minnesota and being very good, and how we didn't know if they were going to start him or they were going to start Urquidy, and they went with Valdez, and it turned out to be a very good decision.
Yeah, for sure. And Valdez, one interesting nugget about his start, he had 13 in play outs, which weren't strikeouts, and 11 of them were on the ground. He had 11 ground ball outs in this game, which is pretty solid, and that's something that's important for Valdez to get the ball on the ground. And as you mentioned before the show, Damien, that the A's are a pretty launch angle heavy team, so that's really impressive for him.
Yeah, they're no a team known for wanting to get the ball in the air. You just look at a Chris Davis, Ramon Laureano, a Matt Olson. I mean, Marcus Simeon. I mean, he even struggled quite a bit in this series. Obviously they didn't have Matt Chapman, but that's another guy. So for Famber to be able to get 11 of those outs on the ground, that is a big big deal, and I mean that's a reason why he was very successful. Because also watching these games versus the Astros and A's happened in the middle of the day. And middle of the day games, they were actually playing at Dodger Stadium as part of the bubble. The ball was flying out of that
Oh my
ballpark.
gosh, it was.
That's why we'll talk about with that ball, to be able to put those on the ground with the ball traveling the way it does in the air in Los Angeles during the day. That is very very big for them. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
and just kind of branching off of the ball in the air and then traveling a lot. We'll talk about Zach Greinke's Game 4 start, which he gave up 4 runs. But a little interesting nugget. I mean, we find it funny, but there was one pitch to Ramon Laureano. He put up a little 2 before he threw the pitch, and everybody thinks that he was, calling that he's going to throw a curveball. He actually threw a slider, but on that pitch, Ramon Laureano hit it out of the ballpark for a home run. It actually was a go-ahead home run at that point. But I saw this little joke going around that like Greinke's just showing the Astros it is beneficial when the hitter knows what pitch is coming.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. But yeah, I don't. We'll talk about real quick. I don't know what he was doing with that for sure. I have been told that he likes to signal to the catcher when there's a runner on second base, so he can get that he can communicate with the catcher a lot quicker. He doesn't like to wait very long with a runner on second, but that they change their signs when there's runners on second like constantly. So he's not really he's telling the catcher what pitch he's throwing, but he's not telling the he's not telling the hitter. The hitter wouldn't know because the signs are different. So I thought that was interesting, and if the signs were figured out by the guy on second, that could very well tip that pitch. So um, that was definitely weird. I don't know what you thought about that, and why he thought he was doing that, because that is kind of weird. But it makes sense that you don't want to have a guy on second too long. So
Yeah, honestly, I didn't think that he was telling Ron Laureano which pitch was coming. Honestly, I just thought that he was maybe telling him that like he's gonna switch to the second set of signs. So like the catcher's putting down fingers, but then if he like the catcher knows like, hey, I'm gonna put down a one for a fastball. Well, maybe on the second set of signs, the one is the slider.
yeah.
So maybe I think he was just saying two to tell the catcher like, hey, we're going with the second set and not just like, hey, I'm going to throw a curveball. But it is interesting. I mean, nobody will ever know. I mean, unless you ask Zach Greinke, he'll tell you straight up what he was doing. He doesn't sugarcoat anything. But I mean, the name of this series was just offense, offense, offense. I mean, we'll talk about the player of the series was Carlos Correa, who had a 500 batting average on here, and an on base percentage of 61%. 61% of his at bats he got on base. That is, I mean, that is unheard of.
Yep,
Uh, he
spectacular.
had he had a 1754 on base plus slugging. He had 11 RBIs in this series. If you're talking about a series that went what 4 games,
Four
you know
game series, 11 RBIs. So
that
he's averaging almost 3 RBIs a game.
that is that's unworldly.
Oh, absolutely, and 3 home runs too. So the other guy I wanted to mention real quick that Jose Altuve had a really good series too, and obviously Correa was their best player and their MVP of the series, but Altuve had a 400 batting average in this series, hit a couple home runs, a 1.326 OPS, which is off the charts, and this guy. It's a guy that struggled all year. He had a little injury he dealt with for a few weeks, and he never got it going this year. He's looked lost at the plate at the time, especially in the wild card series. Outside of one at bat where he drew a bases loaded walk, he just looked completely lost. And it is very important for the Astros if they get this guy going, because he was a former MVP. He's a really good player, and they need him going if they're going to move on after this series. So
Yeah, we'll talk about more about Altuve and that Astros lineup when we start previewing the ALCS. But to jump over to who they will be facing, we're going to talk about the Rays versus Yankees series. Um, this is this is going to be the series that is the best out of this round. And if it had not been for the game 5 in this series, we would have been saying that game 2 versus Dodgers Padres would have been the game of the series. Um, but the Rays pitching allowed 20 runs in 5 games, which is an average about 4 runs per game. But I think we said what 7? I think it was 6 or 7 of those came off their bullpen in game 1. Um,
yeah, game one was a big struggle for the bullpen. I think it was 4-5, but the Yankees won game one 9-3. And you think about it, 9 of the Yankees runs scored in this series were in game one. So um, that was very, obviously a very good series for them, for the Rays pitching. Little nugget too that 18 strikeouts a game two for the Rays pitching, which is crazy. I know you said Tyler Glass now had 10, and their bullpen is really good. So um, this pitching performance from the Rays was very impressive. It was the key to the series.
yeah, I mean, just jumping off how good the Rays pitching has been, this will tell you how good this one of these batters have been. Is Giancarlo Stanton had 3 home runs in this series in 3 different games. I know one of them he had a 2 home run game, wasn't it?
Yeah, he had four
But
home four homers total in 3 different games. He homered.
he had a streak of 5 games in a row because he had homered in the last 2 of the wild card, or the 2 games they won in the wild card series, and then 3 in this one. So he had a 5 game streak of home runs, which is in the playoffs. That's a big thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Stanton looked really good, and maybe this is a sign of things to come here coming up. Maybe next year if Stanton can stay healthy. I mean, obviously looked the part of being able to be very, very, very productive still after the beginning of this series, and he was incredible. And he really, honestly, was probably the best hitter in the series. Although our player of the series is on the Rays because they won, and that player is Randy Arozarena, who was absolutely spectacular. 3 homers, He hit 421 with a 476 on base, an 895 slugging, and a 1.371 OPS. And he just continued what he did in the wild card series. He was great there too. This is a guy that they got in a trade back in, I believe it was before the season.
Yep.
For They traded for Jose Martinez and Randy Arozarena, and they gave up Matthew Liberatore, who is a left-handed pitching prospect. I think he's like the 61st ranked prospect um, on MLB.com on MLB Pipeline. I'm not 100% sure on that number, but he's but Randy Arozarena has been absolutely worth it. He's carried the Rays offense at times throughout this postseason.
Yeah, and honestly, he's probably I mean, he wasn't talked about when that trade happened, really. I mean, they just were counting him as kind of like a throw-in, that the main deal was going to be for Jose Martinez, who the Rays have already turned around and flipped to the Cubs,
Yep.
to give Rosarena more of a shot, actually. So for him to come in this series, I mean, he hit a homer off Garrett Cole.
Yep.
That was to start. Was it to start game
I think it'd be game
one?
one, yeah, because I
I
think
don't know if it
Meadows hit
was,
the homer off of Cole in game five. So
yeah, I mean, I knew he hit one off Cole early in the series, which would have been game one. But I mean, for Arozarena to have this good of a series, the Rays might have found struck gold again, just like they did with trading Tyler Glasnow or getting Tyler Glasnow and Austin Meadows for Chris Archer. So we'll see. But another big part of this series that was honestly the best part of the series was Aroldis Chapman blowing it again, giving up a homer to Mike Broso, which was the go-ahead homer in the eighth inning in Game 5. And
yep.
actually, a little nugget about that is that Broso is the guy that Chapman threw a fastball over his head earlier in the season that resulted in Chapman getting a 3-game suspension, which is still pending and will happen next year. But for Bro, it was kind of a little bit of revenge. So you're gonna throw a fastball over my head, and then I'm gonna turn your fastball around for a home run in the playoffs and knock you guys out.
Yeah, that was crazy. The game five, the whole of game five was crazy. You had coming up before that home run, you had Garrett Cole pitch game five on 3 days rest, and he looked great. It's 5 1/3 innings, one hit, one run. That only hit was a home run for Austin Meadows. 2 walks, 9 strikeouts. I mean, he looked great, and he got the game to the Yankees bullpen. The Rays started Tyler Glasnow on 2 days rest, which is crazy. And he came in and he pitched 2 1/3 innings and looked good. He did walk a couple guys, but I mean, he was able to get the game moving along. And then the closer for the Rays actually entered in the third inning, which is crazy. Nick Anderson. Of course, the Rays are a team that mixes and matches their bullpen a lot. They don't always set rules for guys. A lot of times they just bring in, their best guy when they feel like it's a high leverage situation. So Anderson coming in that game in the third inning was really interesting, and it worked out for him because they got that game into a tied game in the eighth inning, and then the big home run, Mike Broso hit off of Chapman and gave them the win 2-1. That home run, a couple nuggets about it. That was the fastest pitch hit for a home run in 2020 at 100.2 miles per hour, according to Statcast. And the only faster pitch ever hit for a postseason homer in the pitch tracking era, not just the Statcast era, was Nelson Cruz hit one off of Verlander in 2011 that was a pitch that was thrown 100.6 miles per hour. And that's from Andrew Simon on Twitter, one of the Statcast reporters. So I thought that was pretty cool that one of the most improbable home runs you'll see on that pitch, and that was a very very impressive at bat to a 10 pitch at bat. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, when you told me that that was the fastest pitch that had been hit for a homer in 9 years, I was pretty surprised. Honestly, I thought that as hard as pitchers are throwing nowadays, that one would definitely be hit for a home run over 100 miles an hour. But I mean, that's interesting. I did know that we wanted to say as well that on one of the Giancarlo Stanton home runs, we forgot to bring it up at that point. I think the exit velocity on one of them was like 118 miles an hour off the bat,
Yeah, it
which
was crazy.
which if you talk about a hard hit ball, they count that as like what, anything over 95, I believe.
Yeah,
Um,
hard hit balls according to the metrics and stuff, or anything hit over 95 miles per hour is a hard hit ball. And if you combine the hard hit ball with certain launch angles. There's like a graph that they show, and 118 off the bat. I think the launch angle is like 25 degrees or something. That's so far off the charts. I don't even know it's on the graph. I mean, that's one of the hardest hit balls ever. I mean, it's crazy, and
Yeah.
he's Giancarlo Stanton when he's healthy is one of the most impressive guys to watch because I know there's a lot of people out there that don't appreciate a lot of the home run hitting and strikeouts and stuff in baseball right now. But I don't know if there's anything more impressive than watching somebody hit a ball 118 miles per hour in a playoff game. I think that's just crazy. So,
Dude, I wish I was there to see that ball come off that bat. Because
oh my
I mean,
gosh.
if you watch a game in person, you see just how fast these balls come off the bat. I could not even imagine what 118 looks like off the bat. Uh,
Oh, it's crazy. I can't imagine. So,
so we ended up saying that the Rays won this one. In our predictions, you had the Rays in 5, so you hit it right on the head. I had the Yankees in 4. So that sets us up to go on to our Rays versus Astros breakdown. You're gonna go with the Rays in 5.
yes, I'm going with the
Looks
Rays
good.
in 5. This is the ALCS. The Rays. We'll break it down a little bit. I think the Astros pitching, and I want to get your thoughts on this too. The Astros pitching is I know Framber Valdez has looked really good, but I don't especially believe in the Astros pitching behind him because Greinke, while they need Greinke to pitch really well in this series, Greinke's really struggled so far in the postseason. Like I said, we talked about him earlier. Gave up 4 runs in game 4 of the ALDS, and then he also in the wild card series he had a 4 walk to 1 strikeout game where he just didn't really look that good. He's not sharp, so I'm really worried about the Astros pitching in this series.
Yeah, I mean, Christian Javier's looked really good as well for the Astros. If they can get a good game from Urquidy, we've already said what Framber Valdez has been. I believe Zach Greinke will still be a solid pitcher. I don't know what that game 4 really was. I think it might have been just kind of the ball flying a little bit. He gave up obviously that 2-run home run to Laureano, and if you look at his line outside of that, he would have only given up 2 runs, which wouldn't have been that bad. Um, so the Astros pitching is going to be a question mark, especially out of that bullpen. I think it's more of a question mark than what their starting pitching would be, because I really do think that if you have a starting pitching staff of Greinke, Valdez, Christian Javier, Urquidy, and Lance McCullers, that's serviceable to get you into that. But then you need a good bullpen, and we're not sure what the Astros bullpen is really like. We obviously know that the Rays pitching is very good. They're top 3 with Glasnow, Snell, and Charlie Morton is very good. It's well enough to get this series done, especially with their bullpen that they have. Outside of that blow up in Game 1, the Rays bullpen has been very fantastic this year. So it's really going to come down to what the Astro hitters can do against this Rays pitching staff. And just a wild card for this series that I have is what Alex Bregman are we going to get? Springer's looked good, Correa's looked good, Altuve looks good, and Brantley is just Michael Brantley. That guy can hit, but Alex Bregman is going to be a big key. They're going to need him to be a very good Alex Bregman if they want to beat this Rays team.
Yeah, Alex Bregman, and he showed some signs in the wild card series of in the division series of turning it around a little bit. But I really do believe that the Rays starting staff is the key to the series for the Rays, and it's the reason that I think they're going to win the series. The Rays starting staff with Snell, who pitched great in the wild card series, didn't pitch fantastic, but he was facing that tough Yankees lineup in the division series. He I think he's going to be able to start game 1 because he didn't have to pitch in game 5. So I think that's going to be a big factor for the Rays. And then you add in Glasnow, who I doubt pitches game 2 because of pitching on that short rest in game 5 of the division series, but maybe game 3, and then moving Charlie Morton up, who Charlie Morton's had a little bit of a struggle this year. He had a 4+ ERA over the season, which over the past few years he's been one of the best pitchers in baseball. So you talk about Charlie Morton being over 4, and you're like, is there something wrong here? Is he this is kind of not Charlie Morton like. But this year in the postseason, he's been great. In game 3, he started and he pitched a great game, and so I think that the Rays are in a prime position with their starting staff and the depth of their bullpen. We talked about in the ALDS Game 5 the fact that the Rays were able to go that whole game against that spectacular Yankees lineup and pitch a bullpen game basically because Tyler Glasnow on that short rest only went 2 innings. So and they were able to hold that lineup to 1 run out of all that. So um, if they end up having to throw a bullpen game or throw an opener and have somebody like Ryan Yarborough pitch, uh, that this is a team that it's gonna I think it's gonna win this series. And I think Randy Rosarina is the key for the Rays too. I mean, if he keeps hitting like he has, they're gonna be hard to beat.
Yeah, this is going to be a for Charlie Morton. It's going to be his current team versus former team.
Yeah.
He was on that Astros World Series team when they beat LA. But I wanted to save this until in the podcast so I can get your blind reaction from it because I know you're going to question me. But I am taking the Astros in 7 in
Wow.
this series. Um, I something about that the way that this lineup has been hitting, they look very much like the lineup that won the World Series and went to the World Series last year. Um, I don't know. I don't know what the pitching staff is going to look like, but I just have a feeling that the Astros are going to be able to put it together offensively, and that they can if they can put it together offensively and their pitching staff be good enough just to hold this Rays lineup to a couple runs. Because the Rays lineup doesn't have any big studs in it. I mean, you have guys who are all solid, but they don't have anybody that's really outside of a Rosarena who's really like rosing up and be like, okay, I'm going to be the guy that carries this team. Um, and Altuve, George Springer, Bregman, Correa, I mean, any of those guys can rise up and just carry the team. So I want them to I have them winning in 7 in this series, and you'll see a little bit behind my motivation of that in just a minute as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. I don't know about that. I think the Astros have had a good postseason. They're going to have to keep hitting like crazy though, because the pitching that they're about to face. I know they scored a lot of runs against the A's and everything, but the A's have had their issues with their pitching. Especially in the postseason. You end up facing Chris Bassett, who had a good year, but isn't really kind of a brand name pitcher. His stuff's not that good. He has to rely on having like pinpoint command, pinpoint control, a lot of movement on his pitches, and he just didn't have it. Um, and then you look at past that, Frankie Montas hasn't looked very good. So they were able to put up 5 runs on him in Game 4, which a lot of their stats I feel like were a little bit inflated by the fact that they faced a pitching staff that had been struggling. They faced a rookie in Luzardo in game 2, or game 2 or game 3. So I feel like the Astros bats coming alive might be a little bit premature because they didn't hit the ball very well in that series against the Twins. Even though they won the series, a lot of that had to do with the Twins struggling to score with runners in scoring position. And I don't know. I don't know if I think that I don't know if the Astros are going to be able to hit against that Rays pitching. That Rays pitching is really good.
Yeah, they're coming off confidence. I think that them getting some confidence back in their lineup is going to be kind of like what they need. But I want to jump over to the Braves and Dodgers to just give this a little backstory because I am a known LA fan, but I honestly do think that the Dodgers will win this series. I'm going to have the Dodgers winning in 5. So I really picked the Astros because I want to see a Dodgers Astros World Series with some fans in attendance. Um, I just want the payback. I want the revenge, and I really think that this Dodger team has that on their mind. So that is a big reason why I'm also picking the Houston in 7. I do think that it's going to be a good series back and forth, I do think it'll go to a 6 or 7 game series. Uh, but I want them to have to face the Dodgers in the World Series. So, but that's just a backstory of why I picked them. I wanted to jump over to the Braves and Dodgers so we can kind of fill that narrative in. But this Braves Dodgers series, it's gonna be a very fantastic one. It's gonna be your team versus my team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's these are the 2 best fastball hitting teams in baseball statistically. They have the 2 highest batting averages against fastballs. So that'll be interesting because I know that that the both of these teams have pitching is pretty balanced when it comes to fastball usage. I think the Braves, with Ian Anderson having that changeup and curveball, Max Fried being famous for his curveball and slider, and both of those guys are not super fastball heavy. They do throw fastballs, get ahead in the count, maybe put people away late in the count, um, both of those guys are kind of known for their off-speed stuff. And the Dodgers, with Kershaw, obviously is known for his off-speed stuff, especially later in his career since his fastball's dipped just a little bit. Although his fastball has been back to, at least the reasonably close standard to what it was back when he was the best pitcher in baseball. Um, so I think the Braves, you know, the pitching depth is going to be the big key here. And Kyle Wright had that great start in the NLDS where he pitched the six shutout innings. That was against the Marlins though, and the Marlins offense isn't the Dodgers offense. So I'm still not super sold on Kyle Wright as the three starter for the Braves. If he can put up that line that he put up in the division series or something close to it, even if it is 1 or 2 runs, I think that could be a key to the Braves trying to win this series. I just don't know if he's going to be able to do that. And I also think that Fried and Anderson, Fried struggled just a little bit in the NLDS. I think he'll probably be fine in the series. His stuff didn't look bad. It's just, the Marlins had some balls that kind of bounced through and got it strung a few hits together. Um, that'll be a big key here. Whether the Braves are able to use these young starters and for the first two to kind of keep it going, but for that third one to really be consistent with it and have 2 good starts in a row, which is something that's been troublesome for him. And then beyond that, who are they going to even start game 4? Because this game's going to go. This isn't a 3-game series like the last one. This isn't a 2-game series like their first one. They're going to have to start somebody game 4 and potentially game 5 that it's not going to be Fried or Anderson or even Wright. It's going to be someone else. It's going to have to be like Bryce Wilson or Josh Tomlin, someone like that, and I would be worried about that.
Yeah, and for a key for this series too is which Walker Bueller are you going to get? Um, Bueller has been really struggling since he's came back from dealing with that blister with throwing anything not a fastball. Um, that curveball is really what causes his curveball and slider is really what causes friction on that finger for him to really pull it down and get the break that he needs on it. So either when he does throw it, he's not throwing it with as much confidence and he's either spiking it into the ground or he's not getting enough bite on it so it kind of hangs over the plate. So he's been really relying just on his pure fastball stuff, which his fastball it isn't great. It rises, it has a lot of finish to it and everything. But like you said, these are the two of the best fastball hitting teams in baseball, and we've already seen Walker Buehler struggle against the Braves when he loses confidence in that off speed and he has to go to a fastball. Just look back to what was it, 2018 when
2018, yep, I was at that game.
Ronald Acuna hit a grand slam against him. What was it, in the second inning, I believe?
Yeah, he had walked. He had actually walked the bases. Walked Sean Newcomb, the pitcher, with the bases loaded, giving Sean
Yeah.
Newcomb a little bit of a taste of his own medicine with walking people with the bases loaded. But he had walked Sean Newcomb, and then that brought up Acuna, who he threw 4 straight balls to, but the umpire called ball 4 a strike for unknown reasons, even though it was about a foot above the strike zone. And Ronald Acuna said, "Well, I don't really care," and he hit a home run after that in a grand slam. So. Um,
Yeah,
that
it's
was
it.
really crazy, but
So
but yeah,
what
I agree with you on Walker Bueller. He's gonna have to throw. He's gonna have to throw something other than a fastball to this team.
Yeah, and he's got a lot away with it a lot. And then which Cody Bellinger is going to show up. We've talked about him having a great series against the Padres. He had that great big catch and he looked good at the plate, but he's not. Sometimes he struggles against hitting that fastball up in the zone. So maybe if he's facing Fried and Anderson who are able to throw more changeups or more sliders or more curveballs to him, maybe that helps Bellinger stay locked on a little bit. He's going to be a big key. Obviously, the Dodgers have the experience in this lineup, and they have a lot of depth in this lineup. Um, but Bellinger is going to be a guy who is right in the middle of that. They've dropped him in the order a little bit, but this team is a lot better when Cody Bellinger continues being MVP Bellinger, and if he's not really like what we saw in 2020 Cody Bellinger.
Right, and just a couple other notes for us here. you talk about that experience, and this is experience that has played in 2 World Series, played in a lot of big postseason games. The Braves haven't really been that deep in the postseason. They've been there, but this is the first time they've been to the NLCS in 19 years. So that's something that the Braves. What's this moment going to feel like for the Braves? And none of the players on the team, obviously, with it being 19 years, have ever been in this situation. And one other thing that I wanted to mention about in the Braves' favor is that the Braves have faced a lot better pitching in this postseason than the Dodgers have. I know the Dodgers have scored a lot of runs, but you face the Padres without their 2 best pitchers, or without their best pitcher, and then Clevenger being pitching 1 inning and being hurt. Um, the Braves have faced. These are the 5 pitchers the Braves have faced in the postseason: Trevor Bauer, Jose Castillo. I'm sorry, Luis Castillo, um, Sandy Alcantara, Pablo Lopez, and Sixto Sanchez. That's 5 really, really, really good pitchers. And the best pitcher that the Dodgers have faced has been probably Brandon Woodruff of the Brewers. But other than Brandon Woodruff, who is a really good pitcher, I mean, they faced like Suter from the Brewers.
Mhm.
They
Davies.
faced Davies, but Davies is pretty good, but he's not like some of these guys the Braves have faced. They faced a bullpen game against the Padres in Game 3 with I think Morejon started,
Yeah.
and then the game where Clevenger started, but he went out after an inning because of the injury, and he also had no command with 3 walks in that game. So that's something that the Braves have been facing. Even though the Dodgers have scored some more runs than the Braves in the postseason, the Braves have faced a lot better pitching. So how could that factor in here? It's going to be interesting to find out.
Yeah, and LA really is. They don't really jump on you fast, which is it's very weird because the last couple years they've been a team that would strike very fast and then they would be good the rest of the game. But this is a team that they like to work the counts a lot and they like to make you make a mistake. But if you look at a lot of their games, they're the best team after 6 innings in scoring runs. They score a lot of their runs from the 6th inning on. So they're going to be where these starting pitchers for the Braves that they can get going, get on a roll. But when you get into that bullpen, the Dodgers aren't going to be able to score all those runs. The Braves have a very very good bullpen. So it's going to be a contrast of can the Dodgers score some runs early rather than trying to score some runs later in the game.
Yeah, and that's a very interesting point because the Braves are very good at scoring late in the game too. I think both teams have a lot of comeback wins, a lot of late inning wins, several walk off type wins. Whether it's last at bat's probably the better way to put it, whether you're home or away. But uh, both of these teams are pretty clutch late in games, and I think it's interesting too in this series that and we can talk about this for a minute because I know you don't disagree with me on this, but I think that this is a good contrast in lineups. I think that the Braves bring 4 guys who are, that their top 4 is better than the Dodgers' top 4 in the lineup. Like I think Acuna, Freeman, Ozuna and d'Arnaud being the top 4 in the lineup, I think that's a better top 4. I think the elite of the lineup is better. The Dodgers lineup is so deep, and that's a good contrast because it'll show whether a team that's more suited for having the top 4 in their lineup be just the top 4 hitters. Like three of the Braves' top 4 hitters were top 5 in baseball and OPS this year. Over all of them over 1.1. And then the Dodgers have this deep lineup because you look at the Dodgers top 4 and you're thinking about, Seager, Bellinger, Betts, maybe Justin Turner. But after that, they've got, Will Smith and they've got Chris Taylor in there all the time. They got Max Muncy, who's been a really successful player. So you talk about that being a deep lineup versus a top heavy lineup because the Braves just can't match up with that depth. You end up going to Markakis, who's been pretty mediocre this year, although he's been an important player for the Braves. He hasn't been great. You've got, Austin Riley's in there who's been inconsistent. So I think that's a very interesting contrast to styles here too.
Yeah, I mean, I like you said, the Dodgers lineup is deeper. Um, and I don't know. I mean, obviously, d'Arnaud and Ozuna have been very fantastic this year, but they haven't always been that way. So how are they going to fare against this Dodgers team who, like you said, it's deeper and that they just don't give up any at bats. the bottom of that Braves lineup really does. I think personally, Mookie Betts. You're talking about the top four. I think Mookie Betts, Seager, Turner, and Bellinger is a better top four. Maybe that's just my personal fandom of the Dodgers coming into play there. But you do make a good point about the Dodgers lineup being deeper. I mean, you didn't even mention AJ Pollock, who had
Oh yeah, yeah, he was
16
really
home
good.
runs this season, and been a very key part of this lineup while the people have been struggling.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
but we also wanted to throw out to you guys that me and Matt are going to have a bet on this series. Um, so the loser has to buy a shirt from the other team. We have to wear it, take a picture, and post it on all of our social media platforms, and make it our profile picture for at least 1 week.
Yep. So I was a little bit hesitant about that because I don't like showing my non. I don't like showing anything that makes people feel like I'm not a Braves fan on Twitter. But I'll have to. I guess I'll have to do that if we lose. And Damien will be wearing a Ronald Acuna jersey here next week, so that'll be nice.
Yikes about that one, Chief.
so
Uh,
So our picks for this series at the end of it, I think we're both picking the Dodgers.
yep.
I'm picking the Dodgers in six. I just don't, like I say, with that Braves pitching depth. I just don't know. I just don't know if they're going to be able to hold up for a 7 game series.
I picked the Dodgers in 5 because I very much think that if they can take one of the two against a Freed or a Anderson, that the Braves just don't have the starting pitchers to match up after that. The Dodgers can throw Tony Gonsolin, they can throw Dustin May, they can throw Julio Urias. If they put Alex Wood on this roster, they could throw him, which I don't really expect. But you know, Kyle Wright's looked good in the playoffs so far, but he has a history of not looking good. Same with Bryce Wilson. Is it going to be Josh Tomlin after that, or are they going to go to like a Tukey Toussaint maybe? I mean, who knows where they're going to go? And I just think that this Dodgers lineup, you can't really throw a guy like that and expect to really shut them down and win. I mean, you guys have a fantastic bullpen, but are you guys going to be able to keep that up for 3 straight games maybe?
Right.
So I'm going to pick the Dodgers in 5.
All right. Well, there you have it.
Well, yep, that wraps up our championship series prediction video. The series might be over by the time we talk to you next week, or they might not. Just really depends. I believe if they get a game 7 of the ALCS, it will be.
I believe that'd be Saturday, right?
Would it be Saturday?
I think it would,
Yeah.
and the NLCS would be Sunday.
Yep. So if it goes 7 games between the Braves and Dodgers, it will be a week from when we are talking to you guys. Um, so and then after that, the World Series starts on Tuesday. So we'll definitely have our next episode out before that point. But
Absolutely.
it'll be fantastic. There's gonna be a lot of fun baseball. Once again, pay attention to our Twitter account. We will the Batflip podcast. We'll be trying to keep up as much as we can on these games, giving you guys the updates that you guys need to know. Um, our personal accounts, I'll be personally tweeting about the Dodgers, and I know Matt will personally be tweeting about the Braves versus Dodgers series from the Braves perspective. So if you want a mutual perspective, look at the account. If you want to know what I think about the Dodgers, look at mine. You want to know what the Braves, look at Matt's. Uh, but anything else you want to finish up on?
That's pretty much it. I'm super excited. Like I say, as a Braves fan, having not had my team there in 19 years, I'm only 24 years old. So the last time the Braves were in this position, I was 5. So I was really too young to understand what it was. So this is uncharted territory for me, and I'm really excited for this. I don't expect the Braves to win this series, but you know what? That's been a successful season, anyways, for them because they're going up against a great team. If they lose, they're losing to a great team, and the ability to get the monkey off their back and win that postseason series, especially an NLDS series that's not just like a 3 game wild card, is has been very good. So I'm excited for it, and I can't wait to get them started here on Monday. So it's gonna be a blast.
Yeah, I can't wait for you to be wearing a Clayton Kershaw shirt. So,
Hey, I like Clayton Kershaw.
well, that will wrap it up for this episode, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will talk to you guys next week.
All right, thanks, guys.